Your air conditioner is running right now. Not because it is hot outside, because your attic is a furnace. That space above your head hits 140 degrees on a summer afternoon. And every hour it sits there baking, it pushes heat down through your ceiling and forces your AC to work harder than it should. There is a system that eliminates this problem entirely. It has been documented since the 1920s. It costs $400 to install. It runs on less electricity than a light bulb. And for 30 years, it was a standard feature in millions of American homes before the air conditioning industry quietly made sure it disappeared. They did not ban it. They did not have to. They just built a world where you would never think to ask for it. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly how they did that and exactly how to get it back. The device is called a whole house fan, not a window unit, not a box fan propped on a sill. A large fan mounted in the ceiling of your top floor hallway that pulls the entire volume of air from every room in your house up through the attic and out through your gable vents in minutes. Before central air conditioning became the standard American answer to summer heat, this was how families stayed cool. The technology was well documented, the energy savings were proven, and the installation was simple enough that any competent carpenter could handle it. In a moment, I am going to show you what the cooling industry never wanted you to connect. The exact decade whole house fans started disappearing from new construction, who funded the committees that changed the building standards, and where you can install one this summer for the same price as 2 months of your current AC bill. Stay with me, because once you see the timeline, the pattern is impossible to miss. To understand what was taken from you, you have to go back to the American home before central air conditioning existed. In the 1930s and 1940s, most American families cooled their homes the same way their grandparents had. They opened windows at night and closed them in the morning. They used porches, shade trees, and cross ventilation. And in tens of thousands of homes across the South, the Midwest, and the Southwest, they used a device that almost no one installs in new homes anymore. The whole house fan had been in use in American homes since at least the early 1900s. By the 1930s, residential versions were commercially available from multiple manufacturers. The design was straightforward. A large fan, typically 24 to 36 inches across, mounted in the attic floor over the highest open space in the house. When you switched it on, it pulled the entire volume of interior air upward. Hot air left through the gable vents. Cool outside air came in through the windows to replace it. The system worked best when the outside temperature dropped below the inside temperature. In most of the American interior, that crossover happens around 9 or 10 at night in summer. Run the fan for 2 to 3 hours after sunset, and the house would shed nearly all of the heat it had absorbed during the day. What made the whole house fan genuinely remarkable was the speed of the air exchange. A properly sized unit for a 1,500 square foot home moves somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 cubic feet of air per minute. To put that in terms you can feel, it is enough airflow to replace the entire volume of air inside your house roughly once every 3 minutes. When that exchange happens, something specific occurs inside the structure. The walls begin to cool at the surface, the floors begin to cool, the furniture begins to cool. All of that thermal mass that absorbed heat during the day starts giving it back. The air moving past each surface carries the stored heat away before it can re-radiate back into the room at midnight. By morning, the house is as close to the overnight low as it can physically get. Contrast that with what a central air conditioner does. The AC cools the air. It does not cool the walls. It does not pull the stored heat out of the structure. It maintains temperature by constantly fighting the heat radiating in from every surface around it. The result is a machine that runs for months at a time, and costs the average American household somewhere between $600 and $1,200 a year in electricity to operate. The whole house fan, running for 3 hours a night, uses roughly the same power as a single 100-watt bulb for those 3 hours. The operating cost for a full summer is less than $10. This was not a fringe technology. It was mainstream American engineering. Agricultural extension publications from the United States Department of Agriculture during the 1940s documented whole house ventilation strategies as standard practice for American farmhouses and rural homes. These bulletins were distributed through extension offices across dozens of states. The language was matter of fact. Whole house ventilation was not presented as an innovation. It was presented as something a competent builder already knew how to do. By the mid-1950s, whole house fans had been installed in enough homes across the South, the Midwest, and the Southwest that they were a recognizable feature of the American residential landscape. Builders included them the same way they included gutters and downspouts. They were not an upgrade. They were just part of what a well-built house in a hot climate had. The industry that supported them was not small. Companies like Emerson Electric were manufacturing residential whole house fan units. HVAC suppliers stocked them alongside furnaces and water heaters. Electricians knew how to wire them. Carpenters knew how to frame the ceiling opening. And then, in the space of roughly 15 years, the whole house fan went from being a common feature to being nearly absent from new construction. Not because the technology failed, not because something better came along that served the same function for less money. It disappeared for an entirely different reason. Before I get to the mechanism of that disappearance, I want you to hear what people find when they go back to this technology. A homeowner in Tucson, Arizona, spent more than 2 decades paying over $300 a month in summer cooling bills for a 2,000-square-foot ranch house built in the early 1970s. The house had 2 central AC units. Both ran from May through October. The electric bill in July looked like a car payment. He paid an electrician $900 to install a whole house fan in the hallway ceiling. The unit itself cost under $300. The installation took 4 hours. The electrician framed a new ceiling opening and ran a wire to a 2-speed wall switch. His first summer with a whole house fan, his May through October electric bill dropped by roughly 60% compared to the previous year. He still ran the AC on days when the temperature stayed above 95 degrees past 8 at night. But those days were fewer than he expected. Most nights in Tucson, even in August, the temperature drops to the low 80s by 10. He ran the fan for 3 hours. He woke up to a cool house. The AC had not run since midnight. He said he was angry, not at the contractor who never mentioned it, not at the builder who left it out. He said he was angry at the decades of bills he could not get back. That story is not an edge case. It is what you find everywhere people actually try this system. A family in Sacramento, California, documented their results across an entire cooling season after installing a whole house fan in 2021. Their home was 1,800 square feet. They had previously spent roughly $900 on cooling electricity between June and September. After the fan, their cooling costs for the same period came to just under $200. Most of that reduction came from one simple change in habit. They started opening their windows at 9 at night and running the fan for 2 hours before bed. The installed cost of a quality whole house fan in an existing home runs between $600 and $1,500, depending on the size of the unit and the complexity of the installation. A straightforward retrofit in a single-story home with an accessible attic sits at the lower end of that range. To compare, the national average installation cost of a new central air system is between $7,000 and $12,000. A heat pump system runs higher, And then there is the operating cost, month after month, year after year, for the life of the house. The whole house fan pays for itself in 1 to 2 cooling seasons in most climates. After that, it costs you almost nothing. The question you should be asking is not whether this system works. It clearly works. The question is why you are finding out about it here, instead of from your builder or your HVAC contractor. To answer that, you need to understand what happened in American construction between 1950 and 1970. In the early 1950s, Carrier Corporation launched national advertising campaigns targeting residential homeowners for the first time at scale. Before that, central air conditioning had been primarily a commercial and industrial product. It cooled office buildings, movie theaters, factories, and hospitals. The technology existed for residential use, but the cost had been prohibitive for most families. And for most families, it was also unnecessary because they had other ways of managing summer heat that cost almost nothing. The new campaigns changed the framing. They did not sell central air conditioning as a luxury. They sold it as a necessity. The message, in various forms across different campaigns, was a variation of the same idea the industry has used every decade since, that anyone without central air conditioning is suffering unnecessarily, that natural cooling methods are primitive, that a modern family deserves better. The result was measurable. Fewer than 10% of American homes had central air conditioning in 1950. By 1960, that figure had climbed to roughly 20%. The trend accelerated through the rest of the decade. The whole house fan went the other direction. It dropped from its peak adoption in the early 50s to near zero in new construction by the mid-1970s. The two trends are not a coincidence. A builder installing central air conditioning had no financial incentive to also install a $500 fan that might reduce how often the AC ran. But the market alone did not accomplish this. The market had help. The American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers writes the ventilation and mechanical standards adopted by building codes across the United States. The organization is funded primarily by the HVAC manufacturing industry. Its membership includes representatives from the major manufacturers whose products those standards govern. Beginning in the 1960s, the organization updated its residential ventilation standards in ways that made passive cooling systems harder to specify and permit. The new standards defined adequate ventilation in terms that assumed a mechanical system was delivering it. They set performance metrics for air exchange that a whole house fan could meet in practice, but that passive systems struggled to document in the standardized format the codes required. This created a regulatory environment where a builder wanting to specify a whole house fan as the primary cooling strategy faced additional approval steps that a central AC system did not require. The path of least resistance became the sealed, mechanically ventilated house. That is the path the building industry took. I am not describing a backroom deal. I am describing something more ordinary and harder to fight. A regulatory body whose membership has a financial interest in one outcome writing standards that favor that outcome over time. Nobody had to break the law. The whole house fan just got coded out of the default path. And then, the homeowners associations finished the job. By the 1980s, as HOA governed suburban developments became the dominant form of new residential construction in the American Sun Belt, the whole house fan faced another obstacle. The fan requires gable vents to exhaust the air it moves. Gable vents are visible from the street. In HOA neighborhoods where the architectural standards require uniform roof lines and specific approved vent styles, gable vents on sidewalls are often restricted or prohibited. Without functional gable vents, a whole house fan cannot exhaust the air it pulls. The system simply does not work. The HOA restrictions were not written to eliminate whole house fans specifically, but the effect was the same. A technology that required a visible external element got eliminated by rules written to keep exteriors uniform. And the industry, that stood to benefit from its absence, had no interest in advocating for it. Here is what makes this particularly measurable. California's Title 24 Building Code now requires whole house fans in most of the state's interior and southern climate zones. That requirement has been on the books since 2014, but it is a prescriptive requirement. Builders can comply by substituting alternative mechanical systems, a technology the state government has formally acknowledged as effective enough to mandate in law, still gets substituted out by builders who prefer the mechanical path. The code says it works. The industry roots around it anyway. That is what 60 years of managed disappearance looks like. Here is what the industry does not want you to know. The whole house fan never went away. It was just pushed to the margins. A small number of manufacturers continued producing them through the decades when builders stopped ordering them. And in recent years, as energy costs have risen and homeowners have started asking harder questions about their utility bills, the technology has come back. The best place to start if you own your home is to find out whether your attic has functional gable vents. These are the triangular or rectangular vents on the two short ends of the attic, usually located in the upper portion of the gable walls. Go up into your attic with a flashlight on a cool morning and look at those vents from the inside. If you can see daylight clearly through them, your attic is already set up to accept a whole house fan. If they are painted over, clogged with insulation, or sealed with foam by a previous owner or energy auditor, that is the first thing to fix. If your home does not have gable vents, a whole house fan can still work with a properly sized ridge vent system. Some installers use insulated ceiling dampers that open when the fan runs and seal tight when it shuts off, preventing any heat loss in winter. The installation is slightly more involved, but entirely routine for any HVAC contractor who works with this technology regularly. The brands that have continued manufacturing quality whole house fans are worth knowing. Quiet Cool Systems is based in Temecula, California. They make a full line of whole house fans designed specifically for retrofit installation in existing homes. Their residential units run between $200 and $600, depending on the size and airflow rating. They are engineered for low noise, which was a common complaint about older units that use steel blades without rubber isolation mounts. Tamarack Technologies is based in Massachusetts. They make a version with insulated doors that close automatically when the fan is not running, solving the winter heat loss problem that older installations had. Their units run higher in price, but are popular in climates where heating costs are as significant as cooling costs. For sizing, the general guidance is 1 to 2 cubic feet per minute of fan capacity for every square foot of floor space. A 1,500 square foot home typically needs a unit rated somewhere between 1,500 and 3,000 cubic feet per minute. The key measurement to verify before installation is your net free vent area. That is the actual open area through your gable vents accounting for the screen mesh. Most older homes with functional gable vents already meet the requirement for units in this size range. An HVAC contractor familiar with whole house fans can do this assessment in under an hour. The challenge is finding one who works with them regularly. In most markets, you will need to specifically search for installers who specialize in the technology. Here is the part that should make you genuinely angry. Several states and utilities have rebate programs for whole house fans. California's 3 largest investor-owned utilities all offer rebates on qualifying whole house fan installations. Pacific Gas and Electric covers the north. Southern California Edison covers the south. San Diego Gas and Electric covers the coast. These rebates are not widely advertised. You will not see them on the homepage of your utility's website. You have to know to search in the residential energy efficiency section and look specifically for whole house fan incentives. Arizona's major utilities and Nevada Energy have offered similar programs. The rebate exists because even the utilities, who profit from your electricity use, have calculated that offering you money to install a fan is cheaper than building new generation capacity to meet summer peak demand. The grid operator benefits when tens of thousands of homes are running fans at 10 at night instead of AC units. The whole house fan is one of the only energy technologies where the math lines up for the homeowner, the utility, and the grid all at the same time. And still, fewer than 1 in 10 new homes built in hot climates includes one. I want you to sit with that for a second, because this is not about a technology that is obscure or hard to find. It is about a technology that every relevant party has acknowledged works, and that no relevant party is willing to put in front of you unprompted. There is a second layer to this that most whole house fan discussions never get into. The reason the system is so effective goes beyond simple air exchange. It connects to something the old builders understood about homes that modern construction has almost entirely forgotten. A house is not just the air inside it. A house is the walls, the floors, the framing, the furniture. All of that material has what engineers call thermal mass. It absorbs heat during the day and releases it at night. In a sealed modern home with central air, that thermal mass never fully discharges. The AC cools the air. The walls stay warm. The next day starts with a structural heat load that the AC has to fight from the moment the sun comes up. A whole house fan discharges the thermal mass. The moving air pulls heat off every surface it passes over. By 4 in the morning, the walls of the house have given up their stored heat to the cool night air. The floor is cool underfoot. The framing is at equilibrium with the outdoor night temperature. When the sun comes up and starts pushing heat back in, it is starting from a much lower baseline. This is why the old builders valued night ventilation so much. They understood that you were not just cooling air. You were resetting the entire building's heat budget for the next day. That insight got lost when AC made it technically possible to fight the heat continuously rather than manage it intelligently. Frank Lloyd Wright saw this coming before most people did. In 1954, he published a book called The Natural House. In it, he wrote that he thought it far better to go with the natural climate than to try to fix a special artificial climate of your own. He called air conditioning a dangerous circumstance, not because he opposed technology, but because he understood what a building designer understands when they spend their life thinking about how structures relate to their environment. A house that cannot manage its own climate without a machine is a house that was designed wrong. He was right. Not because air conditioning is evil. It is not. It is a useful tool in extreme conditions. But the wholesale replacement of passive cooling strategies with a single mechanical solution changed how houses were designed, built, and experienced. Houses stopped being oriented to catch prevailing breezes. Deep roof overhangs that shaded walls disappeared. Cross ventilation was designed out because the AC handled temperature anyway. Thermal mass was abandoned because spray foam and fiberglass handled insulation. Every one of those design decisions that went away in the 1960s and 70s would have made a whole house fan more effective. And every one of them also would have reduced your AC bill. They went away together. That is not a coincidence. Here is what I want you to do this week. First, go up into your attic. Find your gable vents. Confirm they are open and functional. If they are sealed or obstructed, clearing them costs you nothing except an hour of time. Second, measure your top floor. A whole house fan size at 1 to 2 cubic feet per minute per square foot of floor space will handle most homes in most climates. For a 1,500 square foot home, that puts you in the 1,500 to 3,000 cubic feet per minute range. Go to the quiet, cool, or Tamarack website and use their online sizing tools. Both have them. Both are free. Third, look up your utilities rebate program before you buy. If you are in California, Arizona, or Nevada, there is a meaningful chance you can recover part of your purchase cost through a utility rebate before you even use the fan once. The whole house fan will not run in the middle of the day on a 105-degree afternoon. That is not what it is for. It runs at night when the outside air has cooled below your indoor temperature. That window exists in most of the American interior, most summer nights. In the Pacific Northwest, it exists nearly every night. In the Southwest, it exists from about 9 at night until about 7 in the morning, from May through September. Use that window. Your AC does not have to run all night if the fan can pull the stored heat out of your house before midnight. And in most climates, if you wake up to a house that is already at 72 degrees, your AC has a head start it never had before. The whole house fan did not disappear because it failed. It disappeared because it succeeded at something a very large industry could not tolerate. It succeeded at reducing your dependence on a system that costs you thousands of dollars to install and hundreds of dollars a month to operate. It reduced the peak demand that justifies power plant construction. It cut the heat load that drives roofing and HVAC contractor revenue. It was cheap enough that it put nothing meaningful in anyone's quarterly earnings statement. There is a repeating pattern in building technology. The cheap solution that works gets replaced by the expensive solution that also works. The replacement happens not through direct competition, but through the gradual rewriting of standards, the quiet shifting of norms, and the exclusion of the simpler option from the catalog of choices a builder even thinks to offer you. That pattern does not require anyone to conspire. It just requires everyone with a financial stake in the outcome to consistently advocate for their own interest in the forums where these decisions get made. And on the other side of the table, there was no one, because the whole house fan does not have a lobbying budget. The stack effect does not have a trade association. The night breeze coming through your gable vent is not paying anyone to make sure you remember it exists. You have been paying for a problem that should not exist. Your attic has been running at 140 degrees all summer. Your AC has been fighting that heat every single day. And a $400 fan could have been ending that fight at 10 every night while you slept. Over 10 years, over 20 years, over the life of a house, that is a real amount of money. It is also a real amount of dependence. Dependence on a machine you did not install, a utility you did not build, a bill that shows up whether you can afford it or not. The whole house fan gives some of that back, not all of it, but enough to matter. Here's my question for you. Did your childhood home have a whole house fan? A lot of people my age grew up in houses that had one. Big fan in the hallway ceiling, made a roar when you turned it on, pulled the curtains sideways in the bedrooms. If yours did, I want to know what happened to it. Was it still there when your parents sold the house? Did somebody rip it out? Did it just stop working and nobody replaced it? Tell me in the comments, because the stories people leave on these videos are how I find the next thing worth researching.